Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Liz D'Alto here, your host for Untamed the Wild Soul Woman, a conversation series where I get to dig in with really powerful and inspiring women on how they transcend their fears and their struggles to live lives their own way, very meaningfully, very deeply, passionately, some of them with fire, some of them a little more calm. It doesn't really matter. It's just their own unique journey that we're getting to share and we're getting to experience together. So today I have Meggan Watterson, who I think I met Meggan the first time a couple of years ago in New York City at an event hosted by our mutual friend Nisha. And I've read Meggan's book, Reveal. I've attended one of her Reveal events. And you could read her formal bio below or somewhere around the video. But why I'm so excited to have Meggan here is because she's really someone who has taken a very, I want to say intense, but also like really beautiful and vast journey into spiritual awakening, specifically around the divine feminine. And that's such a hot topic right now. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and language, representation. I don't know. But Meggan is so real and pure, and I dig it. I dig it so much. So Meggan, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
So the first question that I'm asking everyone is, what do you love about being a woman?
What do I love about being a woman? Is there just one answer? Does there have to be a type of answer, or can there be a whole sort of tier of things that sort of come down like a chandelier?
That last one, all of it.
I love that we can have an orgasm and then have another orgasm and then another orgasm and another orgasm, and we don't have to break or wait or recharge in any way. We can just keep going deeper and deeper and expanding wider and wider. I love that. I've always thought that was pretty nifty about being a woman. And I think another aspect, that's related to that is being able to have a child. Physically to have a child. That was a tremendous experience, both terrifying and sacred for me, and it changed me indelibly as a human, I feel, because it really rooted me to being here. I felt this real sense of warrior goddess energy come through me when I was pushing my son out, and I was with midwives, and they brought this mirror around to look, and I have no judgments around that. That's so awesome. That's so great if women want to do that. But it was really interesting because in the moment, I didn't want to see my Jaji and like what all was going down, because that in a way was an abstraction. Looking at myself, looking at the reflection of myself, was myself once removed. I was so in my body. I was so incredibly embodied. I was already seeing everything down there from the inside. Yeah. So I didn't need to see it from the outside. And looking at it in a mirror, in a way, tried to bring me outside of the experience and look at it from without. And I already had the full scope of everything that was happening on multiple layers, because I was so incredibly present and I was so incredibly awake and aware to everything that was happening. I mean, the intensity of the sensations, of course, was establishing that, but it was also this tremendous love. I was doing everything that needed to be done to get this soul from out of my body safely. And it was that love that rooted me firmly in my body and really located me here. And it changed me as a person, because there were so many people around me, outside of me, telling me, don't scream so loudly. sit in a different position, or here, look at your vagina. And I was so in the experience. I was so in my own knowing of what exactly I needed to do. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I didn't even need to say shut up or get like that. I mean, all I needed to do was just take each next step, each next, just I owned my own knowing. There was no need to explain it or justify it or prove it to anybody outside of me. I just owned my own knowing. And that was really incredibly powerful. So that capacity to be able to grow, incubate, and then give birth to new life is also an amazing part about being a woman. I could go on and on, so.
I want you to keep going on, but I want to ask this question since what you just said. Something about owning your own knowing.
Yes.
So after that experience of birth, did your relationship to that concept change in the whole rest of your life as well?
Yes.
Cool.
Absolutely. Before that, I had always sort of tiptoed and dabbled in what I call going within, cultivating this sense of dropping in to what I call the heart, whatever you want to understand that mystical space to be, and however you want to see it, but dropping into my heart, going within, and really listening to the voice of my soul, really hearing my soul voice or my truth, however you want to refer to it or think of it. But I'd been working on that for most of my life up until that point. And, at various different times struggled with believing what I heard. Or if I may really believe it, but then struggle with putting it into action and really, being unfaltering and uncompromising about the dictates of my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would sort of go in and out of honeymoon phases with my soul. And it was like, after that experience, I've always said that I can't really know something until I experience it in my body.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was that moment. And I think that can come to us as women in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be physical birth. It can be other forms of trauma or ecstasy, or, just moments of riveting experience where we understand that we have a choice here. We can believe in this truth that we can connect to inside of us, a truth that's singular to us, what our truth is for our authentic life. Or we can doubt ourselves and we can be wishy-washy and flaky and say, well, I think amazing. I want this and I want that, but I'm not sure. And maybe, could you tell me? And what do you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I think so often we get in that place, but I think that place is ultimately about not being in the body, because I haven't really experienced a woman who doesn't know exactly who she is, what she wants, and what she's come here to do if she's in her body. I mean, if you're in your body, you can't but know it. It's just there, it's just like, oh, it's just right there. And it's blaringly clear. And it's something that then you can either ignore, stifle, and deny, or try to be like, because sometimes seeing that truth means radical change in our lives, in our external worlds.
It usually does, I feel like. So there were so many great things that you just said there, and I want to unpack a couple of them. So the idea of being in your body is literally the entire focal point of my entire business in Wild Soul Movement. As a personal trainer for many years, I was helping people work out. And it's kind of just like you said about that experience of like, no, I don't need to see this experience from the outside. I just had the experience from the inside. I mean, that's the whole jam. That's been a huge transition in my own life, and now what I lead women through as well. For you, I'd love to know, how do you get into your body? because it's so different for everyone. Like wild soul movement, of course, is a modality, but there's so many pathways in. And then also, how do you stay living in a world that is constantly trying to pull you out?
I think, well, first of all, you said it in suggesting that, every person really has to walk that labyrinth themselves. You really have to figure out what unique steps you have to take to become fully embodied. It's to a certain extent, it's something that you can only really figure out in my experience, by doing this process of going within. Getting these little tastes of what it is to be connected to a truth that is much, much more powerful and wise and timeless than just the ego and the conscious reasoning we sort of usually exist in and on and with. So, but, I would say that for me, to speak from my experience, I had to first disengage from the people and the external things in my life that were keeping me in a sort of systematic state of disassociating. So I had a massive panic disorder, which was at times, devastating and at times humorous, running off airplanes, lifting up flight attendants, to get off at the last minute. And, literally sitting just in a movie theater and thinking in that moment, I'm going to die. It's like, it was a massive education in how to not leave my body when I'm experiencing intense amounts of fear, and intense reptilian brain, surges that I need to fight or flight. Yeah. So it was an incredible induction into whole trajectory of moving back fully into the body. And I would say one of the most important things that I did at that time is I went on a pilgrimage. And, not everybody can do something like that, but a pilgrimage doesn't have to happen. I happened to go to the south of France to, sacred sites of Mary Magdalene and the Black Madonna. A pilgrimage can be just going to some sort of sacred ground or sacred place where you feel. It can be the beach, it can be, but beginning to integrate a sense of detaching from the external that you're used to, because that helps you more fully drop in and begin that intimacy with what's really true for you, beginning to connect to that soul voice inside of you, or that sense of truth within you. So that was one of the steps, was sort of disconnecting there. And then, as a theologian, it was really important for me to look at systematically, when I was in both seminary and divinity school, to look at the way that organized institutional religions the world over have really focused on this idea that the soul is separate from the body. And even more, that the soul is somehow supreme to the body, that the body is less than. That is a constant and prevalent theme throughout most religious traditions, and especially the Western religious traditions, which most of us in North America have been mostly exposed to. And this idea that the soul is greater than the body, or the body is less than the soul, really creates this divide that the body is somehow sacred. And so for me, a crucial step was in really understanding and experiencing what was true for me, because I didn't experience that was true. I didn't experience that the body was somehow less than the soul. My body is my chance for my soul to be here.
Yeah.
And that sense of something being above or below, is also a theme in terms of that the light is more important than the dark, or male is more important than female, masculine more important than, and instead, sort of in my spiritual, metaphysical reality, I began to see everything as eye to eye. I began to really understand that love only exists between equals, right? So we have to render everything to a certain extent eye to eye with each other. All things within us So things that we may have considered to be more important or less important, or just sort of put it all in a big powwow circle with a fire in the middle, rather than in this hierarchical or, linear idea of how things are listed in importance.
Yeah.
And for me, that really seeing the body as sacred as the soul began this transmutation for me of being able to be here more often, be present more often. And, that experience, the second part of your question was, well, and then, so once you're there, once you're embodied, how do you stay there? So my experience, the experiences that were sort of like these little diamonds dropped on my pilgrimage, throughout the journey, were these moments when mysteriously I would be just, I call it being kneed. I would literally just be brought to the ground with this weight of my own love returning to me, of me suddenly becoming conscious again of let's say, for example, the weight of the soul, or like coming into contact again with this limitless source of love that is not outside of us, is not in one person, one institution, something that we have to do anything to get. It's actually just within us. We just have to claim it. We just have to go within it, acknowledge it, and experience it. So I would experience these moments of just being, floored and kneed by this tremendous amount of love. And that was a spiritual experience for me, right? So it's the opposite of the ordinary trajectory. Usually people talk about a spiritual experience as being when you transcend the body and you're like, oh, I'm in the light, or like angels come and bring me up, and,
Yeah.
And mine was the exact opposite. It was, for me, a spiritual experience was actually just being fully in my body and unafraid. I wasn't experiencing anxiety or reptilian panic attacks, or I was just completely and fully at peace with being present in my body. And all I could experience and feel was the reality that I am a soul, and that this soul contains a limitless amount of love that exists from before and beyond me and will never die. So, that brings somebody a lot of peace and a lot of equanimity. And so I experienced these little tastes of it. And of course, when I was in it, I felt like, oh my God, this is it. Like, I'm a saint, or I'm done. Like, it's over, game over. Like, it's like, give me the medal and be over in the corner because I'm done. And, I would wake up the next morning and feel like a Mack truck had hit me, and, go into a panic attack over whether or not I could find, a breakfast place that had the right coffee. I immediately would go back and then feel this sense of despair because I was away from that love. And so when I returned from the pilgrimage, it also was very much a time to ground, a time to figure out, how do I not just get, kneed and like bulldozed by this love on these, in these sacred cathedrals in France. How do I experience this every day in line at the grocery store, on the subway, while spending time with my son, like entrenched in the middle of the everyday? How do I experience the divine? Yeah. And what I found was that it takes a certain sense of devotion, a certain sense of self-love. What I wanted for myself was that deep, true connection to the soul. I wanted to feel that because it felt amazing. It was like honey being diffused through my bloodstream. I mean, who doesn't want that? So, but I didn't want it in a way where I would forget to put my pants on then when I walk out the door, I wanted it to be integrated, and I wanted it to be in a way, in doses where I can still function and appear, somewhat non-insane to people around me. And so I began to, develop this, what I call a soul voice meditation. And it's really just a practice Anyone can do it, and anywhere, which I think is the really great part about it. It basically just involves, like I mentioned before, just going within and going to that space that I refer to as heart, that can look like anything, for you in your imagination. It can look like a sanctuary. It can look like, a disco tech. What's a discotheque? Is that like European? Who says discotheque?
Nightclub, right? It's just a night.
I love myself. Where did that come from? It can look like a nightclub. It can look like anything. It's just a space within that feels inviting and where you feel like you can meet with your truth, your soul. And so, the powerful aspect about this as well is that, the more and more you do it, the more you sort of go within and give your soul a fist pump and just sort of say, kind of go eye to eye with your soul and just sort of say, you take the lead. I'm all ears. Like, be loud in me. Whatever you might say with that little drop in, or whatever for that day to somehow live into the answer to during the day, you begin to crave it, because the more and more you go into that real and true core of yourself, the more you feel the disparity when you're existing on some sort of surface plane and you're really answering to other people in ways that drain you and makes you feel like you're really caring for other people's egos at this expense of your own soul.
Yeah.
Which is, a hazardous thing to do. So the way that I found that I could stay within to really practice staying embodied is, like going eye to eye. One of my favorite exercises, aside from the soul voice meditation, which again can be done anywhere. I mean, you can go within while you're taking a shower. I mean, I highly recommend that, rather than trying to integrate it into your life, like by waking up a half an hour earlier, or, none of that crap ever works. That's so hard. We all so just absolutely, stressed, and we have so much going on. I find that it really works to look at what's already habituated in your life. So pick a few things that are already habituated when you brush your teeth, when you take a shower, your commute to work, whatever it might be, when you're exercising, on the elliptical machine. Just say to yourself that those are my designated points where I'm going to check within. I'm going to go within and I'm going to ask a question of my soul. I'm going to just, get the sense that I'm more connected, or ask for my soul to somehow feed me or speak to me, or, and it builds. And another practice that I started that had a very powerful impact for me, it's really embarrassing at first. It's kind of, but it involves that you use a mirror and you just look yourself in the eyes. And, initially it's like, it feels a little uncomfortable, you're like, and get up close, like get up close to the mirror. And, at first you'll look at your eyes and you'll be like, you'll notice some things. You might look at, like, if you have more lines on your face, or if, the color of your eyes, or like if you need to pluck your eyebrows, like you'll be looking at your face. But eventually, the more you stick with it, you'll begin to focus on what the presence that emerges behind your eyes, and not actually the color of your eyes or what your face actually looks like. You begin to really become aware of a presence that emerges through your eyes and from behind your eyes. And the more and more I really began to connect with that presence I started to witness in the mirror, the more I began to become conscious of when I was really aware and conscious of being in my body, because that, to me, that's the presence of the soul. And the more I felt like I could really connect to that truth, in a way, it's an anchor. It's a way to anchor into your body, to really become intimate with your soul, to really allow it to become your beloved. You know, the thing in your life of which you are most loyal and most faithful. And that to me is the way to stay in the body.
I read your book probably a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and it's so funny as you're saying many of these things, I'm like having flashes of remembering your amazing stories. So if you're watching this interview and you're like melting over here like I am, check out her book Reveal, because she has so many great deeper stories with like personal examples of a lot of everything she just said. So I have to tell you two things as you were talking that came to me. Number one, when you were talking about pilgrimage, I actually interviewed another of our mutual friends, Rochelle Sheik. And when I asked Rochelle, because she's so magical, what are her favorite books, she said Reveal, but she also talked about pilgrimage and gave us a really beautiful story about that practical pilgrimage, like just at home in your own neighborhood, because, you know, like she said, she's been able to travel the world and go to all these amazing places, but she's like, you know, not everyone can friggin' do that. You could do that in your neighborhood, wherever it is that you live. So I'm so glad you said that. And then I almost started busting out laughing. I'm so glad you said the part about the body and the soul being eye to eye, and this hierarchy that we perceive, especially those of us that have come up in Western religions, because I'll never forget a couple years ago when I was still living in New York, I got a letter from my aunt. My aunt is notorious in our family for writing these handwritten missals. I mean, and she means the best. But somewhere in her missal to me was how she felt bad for me that my business that was so focused around body would never bring me or anyone else any satisfaction, because, you know, I was missing this whole God piece. And that's an exact, I love my aunt, but being like very religious, traditionally Catholic, that's exact proof of what you said. These traditions that many of us are brought up and go, nope, body here, God here.
Right.
Separate. And I love the way you're going, nope.
Right.
This is how you experience the divine. This is where it is. Like, it's so... For me, that's been one of the most empowering experiences of my life, to be like, no, like, she's in here. Like, this is where I get the message. This is where the connection happens. And that's been a pretty common theme in these interviews of people saying, get in your body, which is why I asked you how you do it. Because, again, people have given us so many different ways, and it's cool. Something will land for somebody in here somewhere.
Very good.
So great. So I know you also have, you and I love... I'm obsessed with synchronicity. I seek it out, and I'm always looking. And last year, I'm actually coming up on the 1-year anniversary of getting my tattoo. This was like one of the first moments I think we connected. You had posted a picture on Instagram of like some kind of heart and an infinity symbol and mentioned something. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been trying to design to combine the two for that. Like, I've never felt like tattooing anything on my body in my whole life, but the message of like love is infinite and only love is real was a deep one. And then we also have this, like, you know, call it a crush, call it whatever you will, on Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
And I know, this is part of, I know you're working on your second book right now, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
And I know you said she's in there, but I would love...
Very much.
Especially for the people who have interest in the true meaning of, like, religion, spirituality, these religious figures as historical and really significant figures. Can you just chat with us about Mary Magdalene for a little bit? And I'm leaving that super open, so you can, whatever you want to do with it, whatever feels really important to you.
Oh, my palms are sweating. I'm so excited. Love talking about Mary Magdalene. First of all, what I always love to say is, you know, just to sort of set the record straight, was that she was not a prostitute. She was actually a very significant disciple of Jesus, possibly the apostle to the apostles, and was a woman of spiritual authority in her own right. So she has her own gospel, which is what I quote from very heavily in my next book, which is also with Hay House. It's called How to Love Yourself and Sometimes Other People. It's a book about relationships and how best to be in a relationship is to love yourself and sometimes other people. So her gospel is really powerful and important for a lot of reasons. But one of the passages I love so much is about a vision that she sees of Jesus, and that he comes to her and gives her hidden or secret teachings that he didn't give to the other disciples. And so Mary is now revealing to them what was hidden from them, and what Jesus, who's referred to as the Savior in the text, didn't teach them. And it's about the concept of this treasure that's within us, this space within us where we can encounter a vision, and it's an incredibly metaphysical text, and also I think it's a very important text because it hasn't been one that many people have been aware of. Most people didn't even know that she has her own gospel, and I'm like sweating profusely. I'm so excited. And
I didn't know until I read Reveal, and I was like, but isn't it funny? A year and a half ago, and I wasn't ready for it yet until this year to really start diving into it. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Well, no, most people encounter Mary Magdalene in the Gospel of John because she's mentioned as the first to see Jesus, when he resurrects. And what I love about that passage, and what has always moved me, which goes back to the infinity symbol and the aspect that love never dies, is that ever since I was a little girl, I read things both literally but then also metaphorically. And so, in that very well-known passage from the Gospel of John about the risen life, when Mary Magdalene goes down to the tomb in the dark to find his body, she wants to know where his body is. And I think it's so fascinating that it's the feminine figure who goes to find his body, in a way acknowledging the importance of his body, right? He wasn't just a soul and an ascended master. He was a human. He was human. And she loved his beloved body as much as she loved his soul that ascended. So for me, I love that, because the love then is reaching not just into what's divine and sacred and holy, it's reaching into what is human and weak and vulnerable and mortal, the flesh, and the feminine within men and women, masculine, and feminine exists within men and women, but the feminine is that attribute, that aspect within all of us that can allow our love to reach where it has never gone before. And that story of Mary Magdalene going down to the tomb in the dark, so the dark can represent the unconscious, or where light has not yet reached within us. She goes there and she brings her love and she waits and she's present. And for me, that's just always been a symbol, a metaphor for the capacity that we all have for love to reach where it never has before. And
you're sweating. I'm getting like uncontrollable shivers. It's so important. I read this past summer the Magdalene manuscript.
Yes.
Someone had recommended it, and
yeah.
I think as a person who has transitioned out of Catholicism, embracing spirituality and getting comfortable with, do I have a deity? Do I need one? Do I have many? I love what Tosha Silver says. She says, I'm wildly polyamorous when it comes to the divine. And I'm like, yeah, like that's how I am. And some deities like phase in and out. But that Mary Magdalene message just keeps coming back and like deepening and being like, it feels so important for people to know the real story, and I'm so glad that you're sharing it.
Thank you. Well, it brings so much to my life to be intimate with hers, and that the Tom Kenyon, that the Magdalene manuscript. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes I'm compelled to read something, like I don't have a choice. I I was in Barnes and Noble years ago, and literally felt like a magnet was pulling me over to the metaphysical section, you know, and I just saw it and I picked it up and I literally just plopped down and just read the whole thing. I mean, it was unbelievable, you know, sort of like receiving something that was really important to come to consciousness. And the alchemies of Horus that Tom Kenyon, you know, the meditations that he gives, is something that I've taught on Reveal retreats, and suggested for women, because it's such a powerful reminder that, you know, sexual energy is something that exists within us. So our sexual power it doesn't have to be in relation to a partner. Our sexual power is an energy that exists within us at all times, and that we can activate and cultivate and build, no matter what, whether we're with a partner or not. And you know, that process of crossing the gold and the black snake through the chakras and bringing the energy, you know, from the root chakra up. His stops in the mind, but I usually go up also to the seventh chakra. But it can activate a sense of integration as well, which we talked about earlier, because there's golden snake, which to me it sort of represents all that is divine and eternal in me, you know, the soul. And then there's the black snake, which to me represents what I can't yet comprehend, what is unknown to me, what is human and weak and vulnerable and messy and filled with mistakes, and, you know, what's human. And so crossing those snakes for me has also brought about a sense of being okay with it all. You know, really a profound acceptance, which has deeply, deeply influenced my everyday life, like a profound acceptance with just how messy everything is, and how, you know, that it, you know, I had these expectations of myself, literally, truthfully, I had these expectations of myself to be love incarnate. I expected, you know, in every possible situation at all time, I am always just beaming, you know, like a fire hydrant, just unconditional love. And I had that expectation of myself. And
oh, I can't believe you ended up having panic attacks.
Yeah. So being able to get to this place where, you know what, that's not the point. That's not the point of being here. You know, I mean, that's when we're disembodied souls in heaven. That's when, you know, we're on to the next life. And that's not the point of being here. The point of being here is to be human, you know, is to sweat and get anxious and to not know what's going to happen. It's to be human. Like, that's the point, and that's the beauty. And to also, you know, experience and integrate this consciousness and awareness of the love that never dies, even while being within this, you know, beloved body that will die. It's such a crazy paradox, but it's meant to be like this. It's meant to be this messy and beautiful. So
something that's come up lately through these interviews and just like conversations with people is just this concept to me of mystery. And the reason why I just thought of it is because I remember when I read your book, when it was over, feeling a little dissatisfied, because most books, and I think this is something, I mean, this is how personal development is, just wraps a nice little tight bow. Here's the solution. Here's the story. You're good to go. Follow these steps. You're going to be great. And I'm like, where's the bow? But again, that was like 1.5 years or 2 years ago. And now I'm like, of course, because it's the mystery. Like, there is no bow.
Well, and that you have to live into that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't tell you your truth.
Yeah.
I can only support you in connecting to your own truth. I don't know what it is. And I love that. I love when women I'm mentoring whether in Red Ladies or Reveal, really want me to tell them the answer, like what's true for me. And I'm like, awesome question. Yes. I'm going to believe that you already contain the answer because I know you do. I'm going to remind you that you contain the answer because I know you do. And, so, and that's one of my favorite, one of my favorite realities is just that, we will never find our answer outside of us ever. It's only and ever within, and we don't need someone else to tell us our truth. We need people around us who are going to believe in us and remind us that we contain our own truth.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, otherwise we're good to go. We contain what it is that we need and what it is that we truly need to know. We already contain it. Yeah. And it's kind of crazy.
It's super crazy. I love that. And it's such a beautiful note to wrap up on. That's actually the core tenet of Wild Soul Movement. Everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you.
Exactly.
And people are like, what? No. Even me as a personal trainer, for so many years, I literally wrote an apology blog that said, I am so sorry that I spent so many years contributing to the very culture that I now am busting my butt to unravel. So thank you for also just being a super supportive, amazing voice for that, and a person who's kind of offered up your life experience and going to some real big extremes, so that you can show people, it's right in here. So great. So your name is your website, right? It's just MegganWatterson.com. It'll be around below the video. Check out the book Reveal. I love, love, love it. Meg has great events and other programs to support people and everything that we just talked about. And then is new book coming in 2015?
Yes, September.
I literally can't wait. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, lady.
Men are always commenting about women's bodies, but it was kind of shocking to me how many women have had this type of experience where a man, a partner, even a husband has made a comment about the shape of her body. And so I'll share what happened for me was, for a number of years, I was a personal trainer and I was super tight and fit. And then when I stopped personal training, I also really didn't work out consistently for almost 3 years.